Do you ever feel overwhelmed by negative thoughts or stuck in a cycle of self-doubt? What if you could break free from that mental trap and build a life filled with resilience and inner peace? In this video, we dive into powerful Stoic strategies that have been used for centuries to help people master their minds, overcome adversity, and transform their thinking. If you're ready to take control of your thoughts and create a powerful, enlightened life, keep watching, because the tools you'll learn here could change everything. Grab yourself a cup of coffee or a hot cup of tea or a smoothie, relax, and join me in exploring the valuable insights that Stoic philosophy has to offer. 1. Maintaining cheerfulness, regardless of circumstances. How many precious hours have we squandered, anxiously hoping for favorable outcomes or dreading the arrival of events we deem unfortunate? How often have we allowed tears to flow freely because the reality we faced didn't align with the future we had meticulously imagined? As humans, we've developed an extraordinary ability to battle against fate, attempting to resist the inevitable pains that life so generously bestows upon us. This resistance, born of fear and fueled by uncertainty, has become a massive industry. Promises of safety, guarantees of comfort, and assurances of a risk-free existence are sold to us daily, exploiting our deepest insecurities. Yet despite all our efforts, every locked door, every fortified wall, every insurance policy, we remain vulnerable. We cannot patrol every avenue of reality, nor can we barricade ourselves from the whims of fate. Life is vast, unpredictable, and often beyond our control. The storms of misfortune will inevitably break through our defenses, no matter how meticulously we prepare. What then is the solution? It lies not in resisting the storm, but in embracing it, in choosing to smile even as the winds howl and the skies darken. True liberation is found in accepting what comes our way, not in futilely resisting the inevitable. By embracing this perspective, we become less susceptible to fear-mongering and manipulation. We learn to face adversity with calmness and resilience, reducing the emotional toll that misfortunes can impose. Seneca, the Stoic sage, captured this wisdom perfectly. Why then should we be angry? Why should we lament? We are prepared for our fate. Let nature deal as she will with her own. Let us be cheerful, whatever befalls us, and stoutly reflect that it is not anything of our own that perishes. In these words lies a profound truth. Cheerfulness is not about avoiding hardship. It is about meeting life's challenges with a heart unshaken, a spirit undeterred, and a mind at peace with the inevitability of change. 2. Diminishing concern for reputation. Reputation for many is a treasure that's relentlessly pursued, a fragile construct that defines social standing and often determines self-worth. Yet, despite its allure, reputation is as fleeting as a gust of wind, unpredictable in its nature and easily destroyed. Some individuals devote their entire lives to building a pristine public image, only to see it crumble under the weight of a single mistake. Conversely, others live in apparent disregard for societal norms and yet, by some twist of fate, are elevated to fame and admiration. This capriciousness reveals a hard truth. Reputation, though pleasant to have, is ultimately beyond our control. Stoic philosophy treats reputation as a preferred indifferent, a concept that reminds us that while it might enhance life, it is not essential for happiness or inner peace. When we tie our self-worth to the opinions of others, we hand over the reins of our emotional well-being to forces we cannot predict or govern. Public opinion is a tempestuous sea, and attempting to navigate it in pursuit of constant approval leaves us vulnerable to manipulation, disappointment, and inner turmoil. To prioritize reputation is to enslave ourselves to the judgments of others, becoming marionettes controlled by external strings. Instead, the Stoics propose a revolutionary idea. Focus on what lies within your control, your character, your virtues, your actions. Epicurus counsels that while a good reputation is pleasant, it should never hinder our mental well-being. If attaining tranquility and freedom requires enduring shame, ridicule, or rejection, then so be it. These external slights, though unpleasant, are powerless to harm the true self. Moreover, obsessing over reputation is a fertile ground for exploitation. The world is full of individuals and institutions eager to exploit our desire for validation, persuading us to conform, consume, and compromise in exchange for approval. The antidote to this enslavement is found in a mindset of self-reliance, a steadfast commitment to inner values over external accolades. As Seneca reminds us, it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. When we relinquish the need for societal validation, we free ourselves from the prison of other people's opinions. True freedom emerges when we realize that our worth is intrinsic, unshaken by gossip, praise, or condemnation. In this newfound liberation, we discover an untouchable reservoir of peace. 3. Developing the skill of endurance. When life presents us with discomfort, challenges, or outright suffering, our first instinct is often to escape, to remove ourselves from the source of pain as quickly as possible. Whether it's the monotony of a tedious job, the anguish of a strained relationship, or the sting of failure, we crave immediate relief. Yet this reflexive urge to flee, while understandable, is not always feasible. Nor is it always the wisest course of action. Stoicism teaches us that endurance is not a sign of weakness or passive acceptance, but rather a powerful tool for inner strength, growth, and freedom. Endurance is the ability to remain resolute in the face of adversity, to weather the storms of life without being consumed by them. It is not merely tolerating pain or hardship, but actively embracing the reality of what is. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, beautifully articulated this in his Meditations. Everything that happens is either endurable or not. If it is endurable, then endure it and stop complaining. If it is unendurable, then your destruction will bring its end as well. Just remember, you can endure anything your mind can make endurable by treating it as in your interest to do so. The wisdom here is profound. Most of the suffering we experience is not caused by the events themselves, but by our resistance to them. When we label a situation as unfair, undeserved, or intolerable, we amplify our pain. In contrast, when we shift our perspective and view hardship as an opportunity to cultivate resilience, the burden lightens. This isn't to say that suffering is inherently desirable, but that it can serve as a teacher, a forge in which our character is shaped and strengthened. Consider the mythical figure of Sisyphus, condemned by the gods to push a boulder uphill for eternity. To the outside observer, his fate seems torturous and meaningless. Yet as Albert Camus suggests in his interpretation of the myth, Sisyphus finds liberation not in escaping his punishment, but in embracing it fully. By accepting his reality without resistance, the punishment ceases to have power over him. Similarly, our endurance in difficult situations allows us to reclaim agency over our lives. The more we resist, the heavier the burden. The more we accept, the more manageable it becomes. In our modern lives, endurance is often dismissed as outdated or unnecessary. We are encouraged to chase instant gratification, to seek quick fixes for every inconvenience. But this avoidance of discomfort weakens us, leaving us ill-prepared for life's inevitable trials. How often have we compromised our values, abandoned our goals, or betrayed our true selves, simply because we couldn't bear the discomfort of perseverance? Pain, in its various forms, physical, emotional, or mental, has a way of bending our will, tempting us to take shortcuts or make decisions that contradict our principles. Yet Stoicism teaches us that enduring pain with grace and courage is a path to true freedom. When we learn to withstand discomfort, we become impervious to manipulation. No longer can others exploit our fear of hardship to control or influence us. Instead, we stand firm, unshaken by external pressures. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. To cultivate the skill of endurance, we must begin by reframing our relationship with discomfort. Rather than viewing it as an enemy, we can see it as a necessary part of life, a test that reveals our inner fortitude. By enduring what life throws at us without complaint or despair, we strip away the illusion of control over external events and focus instead on mastering ourselves. It is in this mastery that we find true freedom, unchained from the whims of fate and fortified against the trials of existence. 4. Letting go of people. Human relationships are some of the most complex and often the most emotionally charged aspects of our lives. We form deep connections with friends, family, partners, and others that shape our identities and sense of belonging. While these bonds can be sources of immense joy and fulfillment, they can also become sources of suffering and turmoil when they are overly attached to, controlled by, or dependent on external circumstances. We often find ourselves bound by unhealthy emotional attachments to people, fearing their loss so profoundly that it begins to dictate our behavior and emotional state. This fear, this attachment, can grow into an obsession, leading us to make decisions not out of wisdom or love, but out of desperation and insecurity. The Stoics were keenly aware of the dangers of becoming overly attached to others. They argued that our peace of mind and emotional well-being should never be contingent upon the presence or actions of another person. Stoicism encourages us to cultivate an attitude of detachment, not in the sense of indifference or coldness, but in the sense of acknowledging that we cannot control others, nor should we seek to. Consider the tragic love story of Anakin Skywalker and Padme Amidala in the Star Wars prequels. Anakin's attachment to Padme becomes a crippling force in his life. His fear of losing her fuels his descent into the dark side, as he becomes willing to sacrifice his values, his principles, and his very soul to protect her. The more Anakin tries to control the relationship and avoid loss, the more he spirals into suffering. If he had approached love not with suffocating attachment, but with a sense of trust, freedom, and understanding that loss is an inevitable part of life, he could have been freed from the manipulative grip of fear. This is the crux of Stoic thinking on relationships. Attachment to any individual can become dangerous when it leads us to sacrifice our autonomy, our inner peace, and our values. Epicurus, one of the ancient Stoic philosophers, offers us vital guidance in this regard. He reminds us that our affection for others should be directed toward their inherent qualities, toward the idea of love, friendship, or companionship, rather than clinging to a specific individual as if they are the sole source of our happiness. In essence, the Stoics encourage us to love people not for who we expect them to be, but for who they truly are in the moment. This doesn't mean that we should abandon our relationships or live in isolation. Quite the opposite. Rather, it means we must accept the impermanence of all things, including our relationships with others. We are reminded that people, like all things, are subject to change. They may grow, evolve, or even part ways with us. And while this can be painful, it is not the end of the world. It is simply life unfolding as it always has. By understanding that attachment to any person is inherently fragile, we can better protect ourselves from the emotional devastation that comes from their loss. Moreover, this practice of letting go allows us to embrace the concept of amor fati, the love of fate. This means accepting whatever comes our way with a sense of equanimity, even when it involves the separation from those we love. We must remind ourselves that we love the people in our lives, not because they are permanent fixtures in our existence, but because of the way they enrich our experience. When they depart, we can still honor their influence on our lives without becoming consumed by grief or loss. This lesson also extends to material possessions, ideas, and ideals we hold dear. Just as we must be willing to let go of people when necessary, we must also be willing to let go of the attachment to the things, beliefs, or fantasies that cloud our judgment. The more tightly we cling to things and individuals, the more vulnerable we become to the whims of external circumstances and the less freedom we experience. In his teachings, Marcus Aurelius echoes this Stoic wisdom by reminding us of the fleeting nature of all things. He encourages us to ask ourselves, what are you so afraid of losing? What is it that you hold so dearly that, in holding on too tightly, you allow it to control your life? By approaching our relationships with a sense of detachment, we create space for greater freedom and joy. We allow ourselves to love without fear, to engage without obsession, and to part ways with grace when the time comes. To put this into practice, we must start by examining our attachments. Ask yourself, what is it that I am afraid of losing in this relationship? Am I more attached to the person's approval or to my peace of mind? By reflecting on these questions and cultivating a mindset of acceptance and freedom, we can begin to unshackle ourselves from unhealthy dependencies and experience the joy of truly liberating love. By letting go of the need to control others, by relinquishing our fear of abandonment and loss, we free ourselves to experience deeper, more authentic relationships. We stop living in the shadow of fear and begin to live in the light of truth. That love, like all things, is impermanent, and that is what makes it so precious. 5. Letting go of material possessions. In the modern world, we are constantly bombarded with messages that link happiness, status, and fulfillment to the accumulation of material wealth. From the moment we wake up, we are surrounded by advertisements, social media, and cultural narratives that reinforce the idea that to live a successful and meaningful life, we must have the latest gadgets, the most stylish clothes, the biggest house, and the most enviable possessions. This relentless pursuit of material wealth often becomes a trap, one that keeps us on a never-ending treadmill of desire, acquisition, and dissatisfaction. We are conditioned to believe that true happiness lies just beyond the next purchase, the next promotion, or the next upgrade. Yet, in the process, we lose sight of what truly brings lasting fulfillment, inner peace, and contentment. The Stoics, in contrast, offer a radically different perspective on material possessions. They argue that the external world, with all of its fleeting wealth and transient pleasures, should never dictate our happiness. Our peace of mind should not be contingent on the state of our bank accounts, the status of our relationships, or the amount of things we possess. Rather, the Stoics teach us that true wealth lies in our ability to cultivate virtue, wisdom, and resilience, not in the accumulation of things. One of the key lessons of Stoicism is that possessions, like all things, are temporary. They are fleeting by nature, and attaching our sense of worth to them is a recipe for disappointment and suffering. Whether it's the latest smartphone, a luxury car, or a sprawling mansion, these material objects can only bring us fleeting moments of satisfaction. The moment the newness wears off, we find ourselves seeking the next object to fill the void. This cycle of consumerism can be exhausting, and ultimately, it leads to a life of dissatisfaction and longing. Seneca, one of the foremost Stoic philosophers, provides a striking critique of materialism in his essay on True and False Riches. He challenges us to consider whether the things we pursue truly bring us happiness, or if they merely serve as distractions from the deeper, more meaningful aspects of life. He asks us to reflect on the true cost of our possessions, not just in terms of money, but in terms of time, energy, and mental effort. How many hours have we spent working in jobs we dislike, just to afford things that will never provide lasting fulfillment? How many relationships have we sacrificed? How much joy have we forfeited in the endless pursuit of more things? The Stoic ideal, however, is not to reject material possessions outright, but to recognize them for what they are: tools that can be useful but are not essential to our happiness. They are external to our true nature, and as such, they should never become the foundation upon which we build our sense of self-worth. This is why Stoicism encourages us to develop a healthy detachment from possessions, to appreciate what we have but not to become enslaved by it. A Stoic does not avoid material possessions, but rather understands their impermanence and chooses to live without becoming overly attached to them. By embracing this attitude, we can begin to free ourselves from the tyranny of consumerism. We can stop defining ourselves by what we own or what we aspire to own, and start focusing on what truly matters: our relationships, our inner growth, and our contribution to the world. This shift in focus can be liberating. Imagine the freedom that comes from no longer needing to keep up with the latest trends, no longer feeling the pressure to acquire more, no longer being tethered to a life of endless striving for things that ultimately fail to bring true happiness. One powerful Stoic practice that can help us detach from material possessions is the daily practice of negative visualization. Imagining the loss of our possessions, our home, or even our loved ones. While this may sound morbid at first, it serves a vital purpose. It reminds us of the impermanence of life and the futility of clinging to things. By contemplating the possibility of loss, we come to appreciate what we have in the present moment without taking it for granted. We realize that our possessions are not the source of our happiness. They are simply temporary tools that serve us in the journey of life. Another essential Stoic teaching on material possessions is to question our assumptions about what we truly need. Often, we are conditioned to believe that we require far more than we actually do. The pursuit of excess, whether it's a larger home, more expensive clothes, or a bigger car, can lead to greater stress, greater debt, and greater dissatisfaction. Seneca argued that happiness does not lie in having more, but in needing less. The more we can simplify our lives, the more freedom we gain. We free ourselves from the anxiety of striving for the unattainable and from the burden of owning things that we don't truly need. This is not to say that we should live in poverty or reject comfort entirely, but it does mean that we should examine our desires critically and ask ourselves, what do I truly need to live a meaningful life? The Stoics believe that true happiness comes from cultivating virtues such as wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline, not from acquiring things. When we align our desires with our values, we shift our focus away from external possessions and toward internal growth. Ultimately, letting go of material possessions frees us to live more authentically and to embrace a life of simplicity and purpose. We become less attached to the fleeting and ever-changing nature of external wealth and more connected to the enduring and unshakable foundation of inner peace. When we are no longer dependent on material things for our happiness, we can find contentment in the present moment, regardless of our external circumstances. By practicing detachment from material possessions, we not only liberate ourselves from the pressures of consumerism, but also empower ourselves to live a life that is truly aligned with our deepest values. This is the essence of Stoic freedom, the ability to live in accordance with nature, free from the external forces that seek to manipulate us, and centered in the wisdom and strength that lies within us. 6. Empowering our responses. In the course of our daily lives, we encounter countless challenges, obstacles, and adversities that test our resilience. From the moments when someone insults us or criticizes our actions, to the situations where we are betrayed or treated unfairly, we face provocations from others on a regular basis. These encounters can stir up intense emotions, such as anger, frustration, resentment, or even despair. It's easy to feel powerless in these situations, as though the actions of others have the ability to control our emotional state. However, Stoic philosophy offers us a profound shift in perspective. While we cannot always control the actions of others, we have absolute power over how we respond to them. At the core of this Stoic principle lies the understanding that our emotions are not determined by external events, but by our interpretations of those events. It's not what happens to us that causes distress, but rather how we choose to react to it. This insight, central to Stoicism, teaches us that we have the power to control our emotional responses. The Stoics emphasize that we are not slaves to our circumstances. We are free to decide how we will react to the world around us. In this sense, our true power lies not in trying to control external events, but in mastering our internal responses to those events. Viktor Frankl, a psychologist and Holocaust survivor, famously articulated this idea when he said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." Frankl's words encapsulate the heart of the Stoic worldview. In every moment, there is a choice. We can choose how we respond to an insult, to a failure, or to any form of hardship. This space between stimulus and response is where our freedom resides. We can choose to respond with anger, defensiveness, or hostility, or we can choose to respond with calm, understanding, or indifference. The key to emotional freedom lies in recognizing that this choice is always available to us, regardless of the situation. The Stoics also teach us that our emotional well-being is not tied to the behavior of others. When we react with anger or frustration, we are essentially handing over the control of our emotions to someone else. We allow another person's words or actions to dictate how we feel, which gives them power over us. The more we allow others to control our emotional responses, the more we become slaves to their behavior. This is a dangerous trap, as it places our happiness and peace of mind in the hands of others, who may not always act in ways that are considerate or respectful. On the other hand, when we empower ourselves to choose how we respond, we take back control of our emotional state. We stop being at the mercy of others' actions and begin to dictate our own emotional experiences. This doesn't mean that we should suppress our emotions or pretend that we are unaffected by what happens to us. Rather, it means that we acknowledge our emotions and choose how to express them in a way that aligns with our values and our sense of inner peace. For instance, if we are insulted, we may feel anger rise within us. But rather than acting on that anger immediately, we can pause and reflect on how we want to respond. Do we want to escalate the situation, or do we want to respond with grace and composure? Do we want to hold on to resentment, or do we want to let go of it and move forward? This process of choosing our responses also involves a critical shift in our mindset, from seeing ourselves as victims of external events to recognizing that we are active participants in how those events affect us. When we take full responsibility for our emotional reactions, we stop blaming others for our distress and begin to take ownership of our emotional state. This is not to say that we should ignore the impact of others' actions on us, but rather that we should accept that we have the power to decide how much weight we give to those actions in shaping our emotional experience. Moreover, the Stoics remind us that those who provoke us, insult us, or behave poorly are often acting out of their own inner turmoil, ignorance, or emotional instability. Rather than reacting with anger or defensiveness, we can choose to respond with compassion and empathy, recognizing that their behavior may stem from their own struggles and suffering. This understanding doesn't excuse their behavior, but it allows us to detach from the emotional charge of the situation and respond with greater wisdom and emotional maturity. By doing so, we can maintain our inner peace, regardless of how others choose to behave. One practical Stoic exercise for empowering our responses is the practice of premeditation. Before we enter a situation where we anticipate being provoked or challenged, such as a difficult conversation or a stressful meeting, we can mentally rehearse our response. We can imagine potential challenges and decide in advance how we will react, so that when the situation arises, we are prepared to respond with calmness and clarity. This mental preparation allows us to maintain our composure and choose our responses with intention, rather than being caught off guard by our emotions. Another valuable Stoic practice for empowering our responses is self-reflection. After a challenging situation, we can take time to reflect on how we responded and whether our reaction aligned with our values. Did we respond with anger, fear, or defensiveness? Or did we choose a more thoughtful and composed response? By reflecting on our actions, we can learn from our experiences and continually improve our ability to respond with greater wisdom and emotional control in the future. Ultimately, the Stoic approach to empowering our responses is about cultivating a sense of inner strength and self-mastery. It's about recognizing that we are not helpless in the face of life's challenges, and that our emotional well-being is not dependent on the actions of others. By mastering our reactions, we free ourselves from the tyranny of external events and regain control of our inner peace. In this way, we can live a life of true freedom, one where we are not subject to the whims of others, but instead guided by our own wisdom, values, and self-discipline. 7. Embracing mortality. One of the most profound and powerful aspects of Stoic philosophy is its approach to mortality, an unavoidable reality that is often feared, denied, and avoided by many. At the core of Stoic thought is the understanding that death is a natural part of life, an inescapable fate that every living being must face. Yet rather than fearing it or trying to outrun it, the Stoics teach us to embrace death with courage, acceptance, and even gratitude. In fact, the Stoics argue that it is our fear of death that often shapes our lives in unhealthy ways, making us fearful, anxious, and driven by the desire to avoid risk, discomfort, or any sense of uncertainty. The fear of death, according to Stoicism, is one of the primary sources of human suffering. It leads us to constantly strive for security, to build up walls around our lives in an attempt to keep death at bay. But no matter how much we try to protect ourselves, the reality remains: death is inevitable. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." In other words, the recognition of our mortality should be a driving force behind how we live, encouraging us to live fully, to embrace each moment, and to align our actions with our highest values, rather than postponing our dreams or passions in fear of the unknown. The Stoics believed that by contemplating death regularly, we can develop a healthy and realistic perspective on life. This practice, often referred to as memento mori, remember you must die, is not about fostering morbid thoughts or dwelling on death in a negative way, but about reminding ourselves that life is fleeting. By acknowledging our mortality, we are able to shift our focus away from trivial concerns and distractions, and instead devote our energy to what truly matters. When we understand that our time is limited, we begin to prioritize meaningful relationships, personal growth, and the pursuit of wisdom and virtue, rather than accumulating wealth, status, or external possessions that ultimately have no lasting value. Moreover, Stoicism teaches us that it is not the length of our lives that matters, but the quality of our lives. A long life filled with fear, anxiety, and unfulfilled potential is less valuable than a shorter life lived with purpose, integrity, and a deep sense of inner peace. It is far better to live a life guided by virtue, courage, and wisdom, regardless of how many years it lasts, than to cling desperately to life while wasting it in the pursuit of fleeting pleasures or in fear of discomfort. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote in his essay on the shortness of life, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." In essence, death is not the enemy. It is the ultimate reminder that our time is precious and that we must use it wisely and purposefully. When we embrace mortality, we also develop a greater sense of freedom. We are no longer chained to the illusion of immortality or the belief that we have an infinite amount of time to accomplish everything we wish to do. Rather than postponing our goals or waiting for the right moment, we are encouraged to take action now, to seize the present moment and live as though each day could be our last. This mindset leads to a life of greater urgency, excitement, and authenticity, as we recognize that our time is limited and that we must make the most of every opportunity that comes our way. At the same time, the Stoics encourage us to approach death with serenity and acceptance. This doesn't mean resigning ourselves to despair or passivity, but rather accepting death as an integral part of the natural order. The universe operates according to its own laws, and death is simply a transition, not an end. Just as the seasons change and the cycle of life continues from birth to death, we too are part of that cycle. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus famously said, "Death is not the worst thing that can happen to us. It is merely a part of the natural process." By viewing death as a natural event, we can free ourselves from the anxiety and fear that often accompany it, and instead face it with dignity and grace. Additionally, Stoicism teaches that we should not only accept the inevitability of death, but actively seek to live with the awareness of our mortality. By doing so, we cultivate an attitude of gratitude and appreciation for life, recognizing that each moment is a gift. When we stop taking life for granted and fully embrace the preciousness of each day, we are more likely to live with intention and mindfulness. We savor our experiences more deeply, and we find meaning in even the smallest moments. Our relationships become more authentic, and we develop a deeper connection with the world around us. The Stoic practice of embracing mortality also leads to a profound shift in how we view suffering. When we accept that life is filled with both joy and pain, we no longer try to avoid or deny hardship. Instead, we approach suffering with resilience and equanimity, knowing that it is an inevitable part of the human experience. In fact, the Stoics believed that it is through hardship and adversity that we are able to develop the strength of character and wisdom that are essential for living a virtuous life. By accepting suffering as a natural part of life, we can approach it with courage and clarity, rather than with fear or resistance. Finally, the Stoic approach to death encourages us to live a life free from regret. Knowing that we will one day face our own mortality, we are motivated to live in alignment with our values and pursue the things that truly matter to us. We are less likely to procrastinate or put off our dreams because we recognize that time is not a luxury we can afford to waste. The awareness of our mortality serves as a reminder that every day is an opportunity to live fully and to create a life that we can look back on with pride and satisfaction. We can live with the understanding that, when the time comes, we will be able to face our own death with peace, knowing that we have lived with purpose and authenticity. And that wraps up today's exploration of these transformative Stoic principles. I truly hope you found this video enlightening and packed with insights that resonate with your journey toward inner peace and personal freedom. Remember, the ideas we discussed today are not just ancient wisdom, but practical tools that can help you navigate the complexities of modern life with greater clarity, resilience, and purpose. Whether it's learning to let go of attachments, mastering your emotional responses, or embracing the reality of mortality, these timeless teachings offer a roadmap to living a life that is not just reactive, but deliberate, calm, and deeply fulfilling. If you've made it this far, I want to personally thank you for dedicating your time and attention to this discussion. It means a lot, and I genuinely appreciate your commitment to learning and growing. For those of you eager to take your understanding even further, don't forget to check out the Self-Knowledge ebook linked in the pinned comment below. It's been carefully crafted to empower you with practical exercises and profound insights designed to unlock your true potential. Whether you're looking to master your emotions, deepen your understanding of yourself, or simply gain a clearer sense of direction in life, this resource could be the next step in your transformative journey. And here's a little challenge for you. If you've stayed with me until the very end of this video, leave a comment below to let me know you've made it. Share your favorite takeaway, an idea that resonated deeply, or even a question you'd like to explore further in future videos. Your thoughts and engagement are what make this community so vibrant and inspiring. Thank you for joining me today on Stoic Emblem. Remember, every morning is a new page in your life story, and your words are the pen. Choose them wisely. For more insights on living a Stoic life, please watch the suggested videos on your screen. Thank you once again for being part of this journey. I'm grateful to have you here, and I hope these teachings inspire you to live with courage, wisdom, and unwavering determination. Remember, the path to freedom begins with a single step, one of reflection, choice, and action. Until next time, may you find strength, serenity, and purpose in all that you do. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.